Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending your assets? Have you penetration tested your public assets? Start 2018 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night. Endgame's converged endpoint security platform is transforming security programs, their people, processes, and technology with the most powerful endpoint protection and simplest user experience, ensuring analysts of any skill level can stop targeted attacks before information theft. Endgame unifies prevention, detection, and threat hunting to stop known and unknown attacker behaviors at scale with a single agent. For more information, visit endgame.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Have you ever had one of those days when you work in IT, in security, where like it just feels like nothing can go your way? Like at every turn, something's broken. Like raise your hand if you've had one of those days, right? And I think Johnny, one of our production assistants, hasn't had one of those days until today. I was trying to explain to him, like, you have those days, dude. And today is one of those days in the Security Weekly studio. And I mean, props to everyone, the entire team, for being patient and hanging in there and pulling it off, even when it feels like nothing is going to work. So good job, everyone, for hanging in there. And what good is likely your first crappy IT day. Sometimes we blame solar flares, you know, backhoe attenuation.
I just see it as normal.
What's that?
I just see it as normal. We've been doing this for how many years, and I haven't seen one single time that not one thing has not happened. Something always happens.
Something always happens. Yep.
That's
well, you know, I got to congratulate the guys though, because I mean, you're pulling it off as hard as you can, and good job.
And so, on that note, we turn it back over to Carlos for the technical segment. Carlos, I like the clip. Carlos, please save the show.
I'll try. That's a tall order. So, guys, today we're going to be talking about operating offensively against Sysmon.
Carlos, can you just make your text bigger?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I'll go here. Font.
Carlos, for our audio listeners, is making his text bigger. So
yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Now we're good. Let's rock and roll.
I'll be talking for the first couple of minutes and then start with the demos.
Okay.
So on the last episode I was on, we got the guys from Logarithm. We were talking about Sysmon, and I remember I was talking about some of the offensive stuff we could do against Sysmon, and we had quite a bit of listeners reach out to me both via Twitter and email, going like, "Hey, Carlos, we'd like more information about this. Can you share more about this technique? So why not make it into a full technical segment?" So I've been working with Sysmon for quite a long time. When we talk about Sysmon's that tool written by Mark Rusinovich. It's actually based on Procmon. So they took this technology from Procmon and kind of implemented it into this new tool called Sysmon that they wrote specifically for detecting specific tradecraft attacks. And it's the only sysinternal tool that you're actually going to be installing on the system, and it's going to be installing a driver and surviving good boots. And it also the only other tool that actually writes its information inside of the event log. And the main reason is so we can use that with SIMs. In fact, the other day I actually got a question from a security professional who was asking me, "Hey, dude, what is a SIM? We use that term so much, but I don't know what it means." So SIM is security information and event management. So it's those tools that collect all the logs so we can take action on those. It will be Logarithm, Elk, whatever is the tool of your choosing. Now, Sysmon allows me to create rules and track specific types of tradecraft, specifically around process creation and process termination, processes changing file time and stuff to hide itself. So when you do your timetable on everything that has happened on the machine, it will skew those dates. Sysmon will detect that. Network connection, driver loading, DLL loading or image loading, the creation of remote threads, like when interpreter, you do a migration, you inject a PE, this will detect that. Raw access read to files, so you can get a copy of the NTDS did send file if you're running as admin, and if you just want to raw copy that out of the file system. When a process opens another process, it will log that file creation, registry events, SMB pipe events. For example, if I'm running Windows Credential Editor, WCE, that actually uses a very known pipe, so I'll be able to create a rule to track that. If I'm using pwdump, pwdump actually creates a pipe called pwdump, so I'll be able to track that. I know that somebody was actually trying to use the tool pwdump. It will also try double-my permanent event actions when I create any of the components of a double-my permanent event, or I try to modify one. Now, this is awesome. A lot of people like using it. They install it on their systems. They deploy it across the entire environment. But what about when we're operating offensively against it? So typically when we go against Sysmon, typically when we do post-exploitation period, we go into a system, we want to know what controls are in that system that can affect us in any way. So because the controls will actually dictate our TTPs and our tempo. So depending on the controls, you can either move very quickly in the environment, or you'll have to kind of test everything out in your lab and then decide what can you run. And some steps are going to be more complicated, and some other steps in your post-exploitation process, in your attack graph, are going to be completely off the board until you can deal with that control. So typically when we're trying to identify Sysmon on the system, here I have a regular system. It doesn't have Sysmon installed on it. Typically, we would look for processes. We would do, in this example, hey, let's list the processes. Is any of the process list Sysmon? Oh, we want to get the services. Services, we can do this in CavalStrive. We can do this with Metabird. We can do with your own rat, whatever tool you're using. More than likely, will support listing files and listing services. And when we look at those, we check, hey, is Sysmon there? Yes, no. But the one that I see the most, that most people actually use, is that they'll list all of the drivers in C Windows System32 drivers, and they'll have kind of like a hash or a collection of drivers, because Microsoft makes all this stuff public in MSDN. In fact, all AV vendors have to register their drivers with Microsoft. So Microsoft has this big list of all of the drivers of all of the AV vendors. So you can just go into that web page, get that list from Microsoft. The only thing you have to search for is for altitude numbers. So if I go and I check Microsoft altitude driver in Google, I go allocated altitudes at docs.microsoft.com. I can go here, and I have all of the drivers that are available, and I have here FS filter for antivirus, and here are all of the drivers for all of the antivirus. So now I have a list of all of the sys files. So you can put this in an interpreter module, you can put it into a aggressor CNA script that you can use with CavalStrive, and you can actually just list all of this stuff and find Sysmon. Well, attackers in the real world were already doing this. So when I install Sysmon, one of the options I actually have, for example, here I have Sysmon, a copy of Sysmon named in another manner. I can just do Sysmon -I to install it. Installed it on my system, and one of the things that we're going to notice, if I do an ls on C-Windows system, in fact, just C Windows, and I can just do sysmon. So here we can see they copied sysmon.exe into it. It copied the driver in C Windows. In fact, also there's another copy that we're going to be finding in C Windows System32 drivers that we can actually detect and do nasty stuff to it if we know it's there. So one of the things that Mark Rusinovich did is that he changed the equation where we can actually change this. So typically Sysmon It's going to save itself in the registry. It's going to create a service. So I can do, let's say, get service here, dash name, we call it sysm to find it. And there's going to be a service called Sysmon that controls the driver. Every time that the machine boots up, the service will come up. It will load the driver in the proper order, and and then the driver is going to read all of its rules from for the driver presence, or we're looking for the service when we get into a box. Now, what Rusinovich did is that if you rename sysmon.exe, you can actually change, it will actually change the name of the service itself, the registry key, to that I specify, and then he added another parameter, which is -d, where I can specify the name of the driver. So the driver actually gets renamed. So that way, he's kind of clobbering a bunch of different techniques that an attacker can actually use to detect Sysmon on the system. So in this case, here on my desktop, I have it renamed to HP printer controller.exe. Let me first uninstall with my sysmon -u, my old copy of it. And then I'm just going to do HP controller -i. Then I'm going to do -d. I'm going to name the driver HPPRNT, and I'm going to call my driver HP printer. You see what I'm going to call it. I don't have to do the .sys. It has to be up to 8 characters there. So I'm going to run this, and all of a sudden, if I try to list the services that are called Sysmon, there's none. If I want to list the files and see Windows Sysmon, there are none. So now it's hidden from me. Well, that is awesome that you're being kind of offensive and doing some countermeasures, and that's great. But there are other ways that we can actually detect the presence of Sysmon in the system. Microsoft actually made, in my opinion, a series of mistakes here. For instance, as you mentioned in the page that I showed you, I was showing you the altitude numbers. These numbers that you guys see here, each one of those numbers represent the order that driver needs to be loaded in the system. And that number has to be unique and it's registered with Microsoft. So one of the things that I can actually look is for this number itself that gets assigned. So how do I do that? I can use a tool called fltmc.exe. I hit enter, and the Sysmon altitude number is always going to be 385201. That's always going to be its altitude number. So here's one technique that I can actually use to find this. In fact, Benjamin Depley and I were chatting about this in Twitter, and all of a sudden, I would say in less than half an hour, Benjamin actually added a command inside of Mimikatz to be able to list filter drivers and their altitude numbers for this purpose only of detecting Sysmon. So the command would be misc : MFLT, and actually list all of the drivers and their altitude numbers, and you'll be able to then track your Sysmon driver via that way. So this is one technique that you can actually use to find that. Another one is just since Sysmon saves everything inside of the event log, we can just look for the EVTX file for Windows Sysmon operational, or we can just look for the registry under event log, and it's going to be there, Windows Sysmon operational. It's not the best method of searching for it because sometimes that will remain in the system even if Sysmon's not present. But if we want to be even sneakier, Microsoft actually made a mistake, and it was that in the description of the service, it still says Sysmon service, which is surprising. So if I do, for example, get service here, let's get service where description, correctly, description, yep, like And I think it was, let me check my notes, system monitor service. So let's look for system monitor, and then use a wildcard here. And that didn't work. I'm going to do get WMI object min32 underscore service. I'm more used to dealing with WMI than actual PowerShell this last couple of days. There we go. Via WMI actually found it. And here we can see the name, and I can even see the process ID. So it's actually telling me via WMI, hey, Sysmon's running under this process, it's running under this name. So now I can take actions against it. Now, some smart sysadmins, some smart blue teams will actually monitor for the service going down or up, or anybody messing with the service itself, or even the process being killed. Now, one of the mistakes that our good friends at Microsoft made, because now we're moving from, I already know Sysmon's on the system. Now, how can I operate against it? How can I mess with it? How can I just call it neutering it. How can I neuter Sysmon? Actually, we have two different techniques that we can operate around Sysmon. The first one is just, for example, using seatbelt from the guys from SpectreOps. It has a command that will list all the rules very nicely for me for Sysmon, and I can operate around those rules. So it will make me list those rules, understand them, and then try to operate around them. That will kind of limit my tempo, what I can actually do, because I need to look into those. Actually, Matt Graver wrote the initial parser for it. He actually reversed that. He wrote a tool called Sysmon Rule Parser, which is in his GitHub under the project Sysmon tools. And then Harmjoy, Will Schroeder, actually added that into the .NET binary seatbelt that you can actually use in Cabal Strike with load assembly. Now we have it there, but I don't want to mess with the regular stuff. So how can we operate a bit more, I would say, heavy-handed against Sysmon? The best way you can, if you're admin, is just simply delete the registry key where Sysmon saves its configuration. And Sysmon will automatically notice that the registry key was modified. And it will reload itself with the new key rule set. And if it's empty, it will not log anything other than process creation and process termination, because that's one of the defaults for Sysmon. Any of the other complex rules that you may have are going to be ignored. Now, if you've been doing penetration testing or red teaming for a long time, you know that most organizations are actually going to deploy the configuration to Sysmon either via configuration management like Ansible, desired state configuration, or they're going to be doing it via GPO. Now, if they're doing it via GPO, what the GPO is going to do is going to write the binary blob into registry. Now I want to be a smartass, so one of the things that I like doing is creating what are called WMI temporary events. So Sysmon is going to be tracking permanent events, but it doesn't track temporary consumer events. So what I do is I create my own WMI query for it called select from registry key change event, where Hive HQ local machine and key path is system, current control, set, services, Sysmon driver parameters. So let me just install, uninstall the modified version here of Sysmon so I can install the proper one so we can test this. So HP printer, I'm gonna install it.
So wait, Carlos, you're bypassing Sysmon by creating a WMI temporary event to then delete the Sysmon configuration without Sysmon logging the fact that you deleted its configuration.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And every time the GPO sets it, I'll delete it automatically. Every time Ansible or Chef or desired state configuration or security center sets it, I'm deleting it again. If the admin decides to do sysmon -c and put it to the XML file and run it via batch script, I'll see it and I'll delete it. And if it's looking for double mine permanent events, he's not going to see it as long as my process is run. That's why it's called temporary, because it's during the life of the process. As long as my process is running,
Okay.
I'm just keep killing it as the he modifies that. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using PowerShell for this. I'm going to register a double my event with that query I mentioned. And then I'm just going to write host in action. Sysmon config updated, deleting config. Then I'm going to run the command remove item property to delete the rule set itself. So if I grab this, I keep hitting the wrong combination of keys in the Mac. I go here. Let me create my query. Now my event's running. Now if I do a sysmon config, I'm going to log process loading of images for, let's say, notepad.exe. I modified it. Configuration updated. Automatically it sets, hey, sysmon config updated, deleting the config. Hey, something else was updated, deleting it. Hey, another parameter was set. Oh, let me delete it also. So it's being checking the different parameters that Sysmon was setting, and then it deleted those automatically. And I look for rules, no rules installed. I try to modify it again, Notepad, now PowerShell, also PowerShell.exe, run it again. My event noticed it and deleted it. Here are the messages from my event. So I'm just messing with Blue. Blue keeps thinking that they're deploying as many times as they want their rule set. I'll just keep deleting it. In my case, I'm just doing it immediately. One of the things that you can actually set in this rule is that you can give it a parameter called within, and then every 10 seconds, I'll check if it has been modified. If it has been modified, I'll delete it. That is a better practice of doing it every 10 to 15 seconds, because it will give you the chance. If I'm admin, I'm set my rules, and then I do a -c just to check that my rules are properly set. Oh, they're properly set, and then in the background, I'll delete it again. So that's one way of actually doing this. Another way is to actually unload the driver, and that's another way of actually blinding Sysmon. So with the same command, in fact, let me just fill this window here. Let me reopen a new one. Bring the font up on it. Okay. Now we're going to be using the same command, flmtc. So this is the filter driver. So fltmc.exe, what it actually does, it allows me to throw filter drive. Filter drivers are the drivers that antivirus use to monitor volumes on the machine. And anything that happens on the machine that the AV or any other product, like a backup software or anything, needs to then check the file system, it needs that driver to get all of the raw access to that information. So by me unloading that filter driver, Sysmon will not be able to gather hashes for any of the files, identify what is the path of the process. So I'm actually just neutering or blinding Sysmon completely. So I go flmtc without any parameters. Not running as admin. Let me run another Windows admin here. Windows admin.
Hey, Carlos, a quick question from me, though. So when you're registering WMI events, do you have to register them as administrator, or can you register them as a regular user?
Temporary events can be as a regular user. Permanent events has to be as an admin. Okay,
thank you.
But the key that we're deleting needs administrator privileges, so you need to create that as an admin to blind Sysmon. So in this case, I'm doing flmtc, looking at what drivers are loaded. I can see here I have Sysmon driver, and it's at the altitude number 385201. So one of the things I can actually do is flmtc, then unload, and then say Sysmon DRV. And valid command. Oh, I can give it a hash slash. Sysmon DRV. Now it's unloaded. FLMTC again. And we don't see Sysmon there. So now if I create a process, let's call it notepad.exe. I open Notepad. I go here in my event viewer, and I look for Sysmon here. Sysmon operational and filter for all of the event IDs of one, which process creation. And you'll see FLMTC ran, unloaded Sysmon, but you never saw my filter, my command for running Notepad. So all of a sudden now Sysmon appears to be running, service is up, looks okay, but Sysmon is completely blinded. So the thing that you have to monitor in this case, if you're a defender, is that you have to monitor for this command line of running fltmc.exe unload Sysmon driver, because it will catch its own unload, and after that, anything else that you do, it's going to be blinded. In the case of the temporary event, if you're running one of the latest versions of Windows, Microsoft actually added WMI activity. WMI activity will actually load anything that has to do with WMI. Any errors that you make during a query, they'll get saved there. Any creation of any type of consumer or query for any type of event, either temporary consumer or permanent consumer for an event, are also going to be logged. So we can see it here that actually logged as the event 5858, the creation of my, no, it logged the execution of my event. The creation for it was 5860. It's actually telling you possible cause, temporary. So this is something that Microsoft added in the latest versions of Windows. And surprised that a lot of blue teamers actually do not know that this log actually exists. So they're not looking for this. So there I gave you several tips on detecting and several tips of actually disabling or blinding Sysmon. If you want to protect yourself, set better registry permissions. So it's only system. If you're doing the deployment via GPO or configuration management tool, that configuration management tool is the only one that can actually modify that registry key. Set auditing on the registry key, so you're not dependent fully on Sysmon, and check for anybody kind of creating temporary events that have to do with that registry key. Also monitor for the fltmc.exe. That is not an exe that any user should be running in your environment. And I really like that exe because if I'm able to log into the machine and I'm able to escalate a system, I'm able to also use that same command line to unload some other AV company drivers. Now, companies have gotten smart about this. I remember I used to do this against Sophos in a previous job quite a bit when I needed, when the AV was bothering me a lot. I just loaded FLMTC, I unloaded its driver so I can do whatever I needed. And then I simply reloaded its driver. I could continue without any problem. And the security team never noticed. Now, Sophos learned about the technique. Silence was the same. They learned about the technique. So what they did is that when they built their driver, the unload block, they simply removed that from their code. So there's no way of unloading other than a hard termination of the driver during a reboot. So there you go, guys. Now you have quite a bit of ideas when you're operating in an environment that has Sysmon. How to detect it, how to disable it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carlos. Well, with that, we are going to take a short break, come back with the security news for this week, so stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.